doodads, scrollies.
Where's lunch?
Overwhelmed. The painted ladies.
Thanks.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Grand Lady. I have to say it has been far overdue that I have finally figured out the style of our house. I know we've been out here quite a few months. We just never had the time. I think we got overwhelmed with you know, the water disaster and everything that caused. We think we're probably about 7 months behind where we thought we probably would be at this time. But now that we're sort of almost done working through those problems and moving on to being able to put things into the house, I took a little time and did the research and learned as much as I could about the styles of different houses. And I'm going to show you today what things identify this house as a Queen Anne Victorian, and it is a free classic subtype of that. It's like anyone else who knew anything about this would have seen it immediately, but it turned out it's surprisingly difficult to learn these things if you're just looking on the internet. Like anything, the internet is full of things that are contrary and confusing. And so I started with a couple of books that helped me learn the language of all of these pieces and parts of houses. So I'm going to show you why our house is a Queen Anne Victorian free classic style. But first we'll start with a little history about American houses. Don't worry, it's not going to be a history lesson. So, the Victorian period. It's really a large collection of a broad range of styles, but all of them were built during the time of Queen Victoria's reign, 1837 to 1901, or about that time. Long story short, absent any real documents saying the date when our house was built, we have pieced together a lot of information that we're pretty confident we are falling within the Victorian period. We looked at a few fire maps for Syracuse, and on our deed, the plot of land is described as being recognized in 1887, but doesn't necessarily mean when the house was built. And then the next fire map we have access to at this time is in 1911. So based on that information and also the facts we know about our old furnace and the very early model number, we know that it was at least manufactured before 1900. We also have the evidence of the old cistern, which would place the house before 1900, because after that the city was providing water service to that neighborhood. So we kind of can feel pretty confident. I hope we do find a document that does give us the exact date. And so now we're getting into why it's a Queen Anne. Our house is quite complicated in design and layout. It has very steep gabled roofs that are not actually symmetrical with each other. It's in kind of a strange little X pattern. I'll put it up here for you to see. Basically just to say she's not a box. She has a variety of different exterior materials for her siding. She has the narrow siding that we've been talking about for quite a while. And she also has some different patterned shingles up on her gables. And she actually has different shaped gables as well. One of them is curved in and one of them is pretty flat. She has that indicative single-story porch. It can be a little complicated to try and figure it out because Queen Anne's are actually one of the most popular Victorian houses in America. Most of the time you'll see an example of a spindlework subtype of Queen Anne. Those are the ones with the tall towers, the fancy turrets, the intricate porch posts that have been turned and have decorations all over them, the lacy woodwork you'll see, lots of ornamentation. And those are the ones that the people in San Francisco have painted those crazy, amazing jumbles of colors, the painted ladies. Those are the spindlework type of Queen Anne's. Our Queen Anne is a different subtype called the Free Classic. It doesn't have as much ornamentation. It's a little bit more for it's subdued, I guess, a little more subtle, a little more pragmatic And I think that actually fits very well with Jim and I. We're not much for frou-frou, but we do like some beautiful decorations. This one is one that was sort of a transitional one from that fancy style of Queen Anne doodads, scrollies, the painted ladies, into what became colonial revival. So there's a little bit of a few pieces on the Queen Anne free classic style that sort of morphed into colonial revival, but they are very distinct, different types of details. So here are the things that I was so happy to discover about our grand lady. She had everything on the list for a free classic Queen Anne, and so I was like, ta-da! I finally found the answer. And for most people, like I said before, it was probably very obvious to people who know this stuff, but as someone who didn't really know anything, it was really rewarding to finally figure out what we have. So some of the things I'll point out to you from this picture. First of all, she has these Palladian windows, which are the 3 panes, and then the middle one is the curved one. She also has bump outs and bay windows and things on the upper floors hanging over the lower floor, so things bumped out with eaves. And underneath those eaves are these trim pieces that look like a corbel that's been cut off, but they're actually called Modillions, and that's specific to a free classic Queen Anne. These are the Modillions that are on Queen Anne freestyle. They're just a straight piece. These look like they were built on site because they're pieced together with just usual pieces of wood. And then this might have been hand done on site. These were thought to be less decorative and less imposing than the old corbels that you see on spindle style Queen Anne's. We intend to refinish these as much as we can. It's going to take a lot of work, but it would be really lovely to keep the original ones. These actually go on the underside of the eaves. Also, you'll notice that she has columns instead of turned spindles for her porch supports. That's on the list as well, and that they were paired is a way of identifying a Queen Anne free classic style. The way the windows are set up also are free classic, with the horizontal band above the main window. Often those were leaded windows. We're definitely going to bring those back to the house. Also, having those really tall windows in the first part of the stairwell, those were stained glass, and as a long-term goal, we'd like to replace those with something beautiful. And dental trim is indicative of free classic Queen Anne. See the dental trim right there, which we have talked about a lot in terms of how we're going to place the siding. And then if you look on our porch, you can also see remnants where the shadows are of where previous dentals were. So each of those was placed by hand. Didn't come as one piece. They placed the fascia up and then the little dentals were put on one by one. I bet you that was a lot of work. We are going to replace the dental trim here. So, we finally have the answer.
Can you tell me where to start? I need someone to empty this heart.
All right, I want to show you this video, this mock-up that we're making for the detailing at the top of the house, so you can see how it all goes together. And this will also be an instructional guide for the people who actually do the detailing up at the top of the foam and Tyvek wall, right underneath that green panel strip fascia. This brown piece is the same dimension as the green piece at the top of the wall. The foam is put on so that it has a 1/2 inch clearance below that fascia board at the top. And the Tyvek is put on so that it's 1 1/2 inches above the top of the foam. Now this is going to get pushed into the slot after we put a bead of sealant, Tyvek sealant, along the junction of the wood on the house and the top back corner of the foam to seal that together. Right after that's put on, while it's still wet, we'll push this tie back in, and then we'll put in an insect screen, and then we'll put in a piece of backer rod to hold all that, and then after that we'll put on the furring strips, and the furring strips will go right up to the base of the fascia. Okay, I got my simulated sealant here, and I'm going to put a bead along right in here, right at the back corner of the foam, and then turn the tie back up and press it into that slot. Now when I press it in, it'll stay there with the top of the tie back right tight against the top of the house, not wrapped around and under this, but right tight against the side of the house. Okay, with that in place, the next thing that comes across is some insect screening. This is what we're using. It's a fiberglass insect screen. It's fairly tight enough to keep out the bugs and loose enough to let the air flow through it by convection from all the way down at the bottom of this siding wall out the top. That's called a rain screen. Bug screen gets tucked in here, and this one doesn't matter if it loops onto the bottom of the fascia, because it just doesn't matter if it gets wet or not. Push that in, and then we get a piece of 5/8 inch backer rod and push that in. Now that backer rod has enough friction to hold the insect mesh in place. And that's where we leave that until we've got all this insect mesh in place along a section of wall. Then the furring strips go on. These furring strips are 1x4 and they're all weather wood. And all weather wood corrodes steel fasteners, so the fasteners for this need to be coated to protect them from the chemicals in the all-weather wood. Now, theoretically, these fasteners or Deccan screws, they can be put down. Just what you want is for them to be flush with the surface of the furring strip. I found that a lot of the folks that were first working on the furring strips here, they didn't pay attention to that enough, and some of the heads here were buried. And what happens is if you pull the head down into the wood, you lose a lot of strength, and we want this to be good and strong, so we don't want it to be buried. So I experimented with this. These are some galvanized washers, number 10. These screws, the shanks, are number 9. Anyway, at number 10 galvanized washer will keep somebody who's not careful from burying the head. It leaves the head a little bit up, but it's got even more fastening surface down here. Oh, and these furring strips, these go on right along the studs in the wall, and these screws go into the wall stud. Now the furring strip gets put on, and it gets pushed up against that trim piece at the top. And these are 16 inches on center. That's what the wall studs are.
Standing underneath the lights, looking into each other's eyes.
Okay, top furring strips on, insect mesh is out and exposed, and this is where we leave it until we come back to do the actual siding. Let's see, I'm short a piece. All right, Lindsay, you get to edit while I go get the third piece. I left it downstairs. All right, in this mock-up, the siding has already been installed from the bottom up to the last 3 pieces that are going to go on here. There, we use some of our nails that we've been pulling out of the floor upstairs. Now this piece of siding, third from the last, the bottom of it should be 9 1/2 inches below the top where it's going to hit the fascia board. Double check and make sure I got that right. Yep, there it is, 9 1/2 inches. And we're doing a 3-inch reveal so that bottom of the next board up is put on so that there's 3 inches visible here. I'm going to put this on with screws because I may need to take it off to show that the guys that are going to do the work in the end. Now, the very top board is cut so that it leaves a 3-inch reveal here and creates a 3-inch reveal at the top. So this board is 3 inches wide. We rip off the narrow part of it and put it up here. Okay, so that's 3 inches reveal there. But we put the insect screen under it. And by putting the insect screen this way, the screen is supported in this free space by this piece of siding so it doesn't collapse down into the plenum space. So this piece goes on last. Yeah, 3 inches is what we want as a reveal for this piece underneath. Now by using these dimensions, the 9 1/2, 3 3 3, we end up with this top piece flush with the top of the foam. And then to cap the whole thing off, we have a drip edge. This fastens against the trim piece at the top. That sits right against the furring strips. And its purpose is to deflect the rain. Now, this would be sealed behind. And I'm not doing that so I can take it apart and show the guys if we need to. So this goes against the trim piece. It's the same color as the trim piece. Water comes down this, drips off the edge and onto the siding. And behind that, we have our plenum channel for airflow all the way from the very base of all the siding up and out through this space at the top. There's a 1/2 inch space underneath this outer portion of the drip edge so that the airflow can come out here. It's tight against the furring strips. And that's the detail for the top of our wall. Thanks.
I'm gonna let the sun shine in today.
Got your sandwich?
I'm trying to make this darkness go away.
We're in a hurry. Get back to the house. The cabinets are coming. And it's raining. And we're eating lunch. Good sandwich.
Good sandwich.
Leave my windows open so that I can hear the sound of people talking and the wind blowing in the trees.
This is what we call a sandwich to go.
Oh, I will open up my eyes so I can see
What's happening in here? Put them in the comments.
I try to
Oh
spread
my gosh, I
my
gotta get
wings
these
so I
in.
can fly. Oh, and the darkness starts to fade. Feels like things are gonna go my way. I'm gonna let the sun shine in the day. I'm gonna let the past be filled with smoke. And I will try to fix what has been broken.
Oh, we gotta pop one of these babies open. Take a look.
I'm gonna let the past stay in the cold. I will listen to the ocean. Sunset, words unspoken, and I'll let my mind be carried by the waves.
So pretty. Oh, it looks really blue on camera. Actually, dark sage green. Base cabinet. Ooh, wooden drawers. Wood on the back. Wood on the side. Yay! Whoops, use your hand. Electrical, plumbing.
Electrical and plumbing are next. Yeah.
And then insulation.
Well, maybe insulation.
Maybe
Electrical,
insulation?
plumbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably do it in that order, considering whether we wanted to do flooring before insulation, but I think
No, we wanted electrical, plumbing. Oh yeah, that's before anything. Mold remediation. Electrical, plumbing, insulation, drywall, flooring, and then the kitchen.
Where's lunch?
We had lunch.
No,
Oh, and I'll try to spread my wings so I can fly. Oh, and the darkness starts to fade. Feels like things are gonna